Today we're making Mexican wedding cakes, also known as Russian tea cakes. They're a classic Christmas cookie favorite, and they're easy and quick to make. Let's get baking. So we're going to start making our cookies by placing 2 sticks of butter, or a cup of butter, unsalted butter, into our bowl. And to that we're going to add half a cup, or 58 grams, of powdered sugar. As always, ingredients and full recipe will be in the description. 1, 2, and our powdered sugar, and we don't need to sift this powdered sugar for this particular purpose. We will use more powdered sugar once the cookies are baked, and that we do usually. We can sift that, but it's not a big deal. All right, so we're going to go ahead and cream those together using a stand mixer. You can use a hand mixer if you want to do that as well. If your butter isn't quite to room temperature, you'll notice that it doesn't mix quite as well as you need. Just be patient and wait a few more minutes. Mine's all right. Either way, you do want to start slowly, especially when you're mixing in powdered sugar. Otherwise, you're going to have a kitchen poof covered in powdered sugar. All right, I'm going to scrape that down a touch and then get the mixer going up to medium, and we'll check back when this is all mixed in. All right, the powdered sugar is thoroughly blended into the butter, and we'll scrape down our beater and our bowl here. It doesn't want to release. There we go. As you can see, it's a little bit lighter and fluffier than when we started. We're going to add to this a teaspoon of vanilla, and we'll mix that in real quick, and then we'll add our other couple of ingredients, which are flour, salt, and some chopped pecans. All right, so in goes our vanilla. Quick mix. Another scrape. And now we're going to add 2 1/4 cups of flour, just regular all-purpose flour, as well as a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And we're going to mix that in not all at once. I'll add that maybe in about 2 waves, just so that everything mixes in thoroughly. Add the rest of our flour, just measuring by weight. We're going to mix this until it's all thoroughly incorporated, and then the last step will be to add our finely chopped pecans. All right, so we have a fairly dry looking dough. That's all right. I'll give you a look at that. All right, it's gonna look about like that. It's a little crumbly, that's okay. We have one more thing to mix in, and that is our 3/4 cups of finely chopped pecans. You can toast those before or not. You could use walnuts instead. I prefer pecans. And if you're measuring by weight, that winds up being 90 grams. So we're going to put those in the bowl, and we're going to mix one more time until those are thoroughly incorporated. All right, so now that the pecans are thoroughly mixed in, I had to scrape down the bowl and the beater at least once to make sure that the dough wasn't stuck to it and there weren't like bits of pecan running around the bottom, but there are no loose bits of pecan at this point. So that's our dough. If you were to taste it, it's not very sweet, but that's okay because the final step after these bake is that we're gonna roll them in more powdered sugar. So you can chill this if you want. This dough doesn't have to be chilled before we bake it, but what we'll do, whether you wanna leave it in the fridge for a day, carefully wrapped, you can do that. You can freeze it for longer, or you can go ahead and scoop and bake these cookies, which is what we're going to do. We'll scoop, take 1 tablespoon-sized scoops of this dough. We should wind up with about 4 dozen, and we are going to bake those in a 400-degree oven until they are just set, but really not brown at all, just maybe lightly golden. All right, so I have a small cookie scoop. That's going to give me tablespoon-sized cookies, and I'm just going to scoop these onto my cookie sheet. My oven's already preheated to 400 degrees. You don't have to worry about these getting crowded because they're not going to rise and they're not going to spread. So we'll just go ahead and pop these on the cookie sheet, and when it's full we will slide that into our oven. All right, so our Mexican wedding cakes are just out of the oven. You can see that they're not really browned, but they are just set. Okay, and they are going to be ready for taking a little turn in the powdered sugar. So I'm going to set those on one cooling rack. And on the next, I've got another cooling rack with a cookie sheet under it. That's just to catch some of the extra powdered sugar. That's to make my job a little bit easier for cleanup. You don't need that extra cookie sheet underneath, but it works for me. All right, we've got a bowl with powdered sugar here. I didn't sift this. I will sift a little bit more over the top at the end, but we're just going to work in quickly. Take a few cookies at a time, roll them in this powdered sugar, and then set them on this rack here. If we handle them too much, the powdered sugar will just kind of melt, but we have to do this while they're still hot, or at least rather warm, because that way it will adhere. All right, so here we go. Got about 4 cookies at a time. You can see their undersides are just lightly golden. That's fine. I'm gonna turn them with a spoon. I find that if I do that with my fingers, the powdered sugar just sort of melts to my fingers. So try not to handle them too much with our hands. All right, besides, using the spoon allows you to do this while they're still really hot. All right, so we'll turn those. They're not gonna be completely thoroughly coated, but pretty good. All right, pretty even. All right, and again, we're going to give them an extra sprinkle with powdered sugar sifted powdered sugar at the end. All right, so we're just going to repeat this with the rest of the cookies, and we'll show you that powdered sugar sprinkle at the end. So our Mexican wedding cakes are coated in powdered sugar. You can see in places it looks like it's melted, in places they're not totally even. So what I like to do, just to make them that little bit prettier, is to sift a little bit more powdered sugar over the top. So I'm just going to scoop a little bit out of my bowl and just give them a little shake. And that's it. Now we have to do the hardest thing of all, let them cool all the way before we eat them. Our Mexican wedding cakes have cooled, and now it's time to give them a try. Perfect. Nice and chewy in the center, sugar on the outside, but not too sweet overall. We hope you give these cookies a try and check back every Friday for a new video.